Well, Kayode Ogundamisi is a long-time campaigner for democracy and human rights in Nigeria. He joins us now for more on those stories. Let's start with that still very active Boko Haram completely overrunning the remote village of Gumsuri in the northeast, with villagers suggesting that more than 30 people have been killed and around 100 kidnapped. Is this another example of the army failing to keep its promise to protect vulnerable villages and towns in the northeast?
It's an example of a country in real crisis, an example of an army that's not got a commander-in-chief to command. It's a clear example of failing society in terms of, people say it's Nigeria a failed country. No, but it's heading towards that. Look, we've got over £6 billion spent on our national security budget for the year 2014. And I checked, Cameroon spent less than 1.6 billion pounds on the same budget. And what have they done? They've protected their territorial integrity. They've taken more than 500,000 Nigerian refugees. They've been able to feed them, clothe them. They've actually rescued Nigerian army, armed forces, men and women who ran into Cameroon, and giving them protection. But what do we have on our part of the border? We've had an army that is in disarray. We've got army generals who are feeding fat and accused of corruption by the foot soldiers, sitting over these soldiers and sentencing them to death. So there's low morale within the Nigerian military. And I think this is a time for Nigerians to actually start thinking in terms of how do we save Nigeria from Nigerians themselves.
Indeed, those you talk about, those soldiers who were sentenced to death. Now, whatever might happen, the fact that they were sentenced to death, what is that going to do for the already suppressed morale within the military? Look,
not only is the morale low in the military, let's look at the cause and the effect. The thing is that these soldiers the Nigerian army has a track record of being able to liberate West Africa, we're in Sierra Leone, we're in Liberia, and they've got very good track record. We've got brave young men and women fighting daily to rescue Africa. But what do we have now? We don't even have an adequate account of the arms and ammunition we have in armory in Nigeria. Boko Haram seems to have more arms, more rockets than the Nigerian army. And what those soldiers did was to protest the fact that we've got military generals sitting in Abuja, air-conditioned office, and sending young men to go and face Boko Haram with superior weapons. So now the morale is definitely low. We had a field commander writing an anonymous letter to the president and commander-in-chief saying, look, corruption is the key to the crisis within the Nigerian military. They don't have food to eat. They go into battle and they hit cold foods that are supplied like 3 days earlier. The supply chains to give them even food in the war front is actually corrupt in terms of, you see army generals allocating, giving contracts to their relatives, and they do not deliver these equipments to our military. So it's not that we don't have a military to face Boko Haram, but definitely they don't have the right arms and ammunition to win this battle.
Now, it's difficult for us to know what actually happened at that trial, though, is it? Because, I mean, it was held behind closed doors. But are there questions in your mind over whether there was a fair trial?
Well, in all honesty, they were defended by one of the foremost human rights lawyers, Femi Falana, and he has a long history and track record of defending people in need. And he's said that the trials were, as far as he's concerned, you were not fair in terms of the real cause, in terms of the complaints of the soldiers were not being addressed. And apart from that, the same generals that are being accused of stealing the money that is meant to feed our military are the ones sitting in judgment over them. I suspect it's going to go all the way to the Supreme Court.
Kayode Ogundamisi, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.